Hello everyone, I am Galen, and in today's video I want to speculate a bit about what we can expect from Total War Warhammer 40,000 that quite recently got announced. This may prove to be a bit of a rambly video, but I just hope we can all have a bit of fun speculating around before we actually know anything official from the Creative Assembly. And just for fun to see if either I or you get anything correct when the game releases. What I want to do is take a look at some established characters in the 40k setting and try to deduce if they are likely to show up or perhaps not at all. In terms of the game on release, future DLCs are of course a totally different matter. I will also try to give some broad ideas how each character can function in terms of gameplay, and we will see if I get anything right. But of course I want to hear your thoughts the most, as this is really just a fun community possibility to just make some things up that we think would be cool or possible. So to start off, what do we already know? This isn't a lot, but it gives us some ground rules. As we know, there will be on release 4 playable factions for the Total War Warhammer 40,000. Those will be the Space Marines, an extremely elite fighting force of very capable and very resilient warriors, but with of course low numbers. The Imperial Guard, sort of the opposite, with high numbers and lots of bodies to throw at the enemy, but just normal quote-unquote humans with tanks. The Orks being a big horde of very punchy and aggressive aliens, and the Craft World Eldar, which are perhaps in terms of gameplay maybe the most interesting faction, as they will most likely be focused on lots of hit and run tactics, as they are very squishy and low number, but possess very high tech. The other thing we know is that Warhammer Total War for the past 10 years was an extremely successful game series, perhaps the only thing keeping Sega afloat in the last couple of years. So while we don't really know a lot yet about the 40k iteration, the fantasy series can certainly be a good inspiration of what we may expect, and I will treat it as that, as certainly Creative Assembly themselves does it based on the game's success. Before we get into each faction in the detail, I need to address the Daniel in the room. If you saw any marketing materials beside the game trailer or even within the trailer itself, there really appears to be a big focus in this game for character customization and your faction customization. They seem to imply that you can make your own faction, of course within the 4 basic ones that are already revealed, but your own colors, your own equipment loadouts, those and faction traits are confirmed to be customizable to some extent. And in my opinion, this really sounds like the extension and a more in-depth iteration of Demon Prince, legendary lord for Demons of Chaos in the Total War Warhammer 3, which, for those of you who don't know, was or is a very customizable character, unlike any other in the Warhammer, or I believe in general in Total War games. So this really looks like the titular Daniel, since that's the Demon Prince nickname, elevated in some ways. So based on all of that, our assumptions for this list are that each faction will have 2 legendary lords on release. This would make it the same as the previously released Total War Warhammer titles. With the whole customization focused, I personally wouldn't be surprised if on release actually each faction only got one named legendary lord, or however they will be called in the 40k iteration, plus a customizable slot, so to say. But that would be no fun, and let's hope that it will not be the case, and for the sake of this list I will assume 2 legendary lords, named ones, to be included. My other assumption is also that there will be a Warriors of Chaos style launch DLC, perhaps for a pre-order or whatever. This was the case with Total War Warhammer 1 and to some extent with 2 and 3, but more on that topic later. And the last thing we need to address is the license holder, being Games Workshop, and knowing their philosophy around licensing products. I really think anything on this list needs to be currently available to buy officially miniature from Games Workshop and have rules and all that in the recent publications. So without further ado, let's start with the Space Marines, which are the only faction we actually know something already about, and from which we know at all that named legendary lords will be in game, in fact, since in the trailer we can see a portrait for presumably the point of view player being Marneus Calgar, the chapter master of the Ultramarine Space Marines. So what we may expect from him? His inclusion itself is maybe a bit obvious, given he is an extremely prominent character for all the years of the 40k setting. I believe he's the named character with absolutely the biggest number of different sculpts given to him over the years, with recently being a completely new one, yet again, that being Marneus Calgar in Terminator armor, based on which we can make an interesting observation, because the one in the game screenshot is clearly the previous, at the time of this video, model of Calgar in Gravis armor. This theoretically could imply there will be some customization of even the named legendary lords. I can absolutely see a potential to give Calgar a Terminator armor, for example, but let's be honest, probably not. It's probably just to not very good and especially not quick and transparent communication between the Creative Assembly and Games Workshop. So Creative Assembly most likely had no idea the new Calgar model was coming, so they prepared the at the time most recent one for the game. Gameplay wise, I think we can expect Calgar to be the most Space Marine out of all Space Marines. That's sort of his deal, and Space Marines being certainly the envisioned gateway faction to the game, as much as there can be one. He will be all around powerful, durable and capable character. Finally, coming to the speculation portion of this video, given all the requirements for what I think needs to be in the game, I decided to implement some interesting options for characters that I think will not be included in the game, and why. First of them being Feren Areos. He's a prominent Black Library books character, being a captain of the 6th Ultramarine Company, but I think he is a bit too basic for a named character included in the game. I think that with the customization slot, we will basically be able to recreate him as our own character, just a normal captain. So that's the main reason I think he will not be included. The next one being Captain Titus of the Space Marine and Space Marine 2 video game fame. For once, he was recently off-screen elevated to a position of captain again, so technically that would qualify him to be in Total War but he really is tied to Space Marine franchise, and I really don't expect him to make the appearance in Total War, mostly because of that. The next character is a broad one with, in my opinion, any non-Ultramarine character being disqualified. While the faction itself is, of course, Space Marines, knowing Games Workshop and future possibility of a lot of named characters from different chapters, I really expect the Space Marine faction to actually be Ultramarines, as it's the case with the miniatures, unfortunately often. And the last named character that may, but I don't think will be in the game on release, is Reboot Gilliman, the returned Ultramarine Primarch. Main reasons for why I think that are that with Calgar already present, we have the head of the Ultramarines already in game, including both Gilliman and Calgar would feel a bit weird, in my opinion. The other matter being that at the moment Gilliman is more of a leader of the whole Imperium faction rather than strictly Ultramarines or even Space Marines. So I honestly don't believe any Primarch will be included in the game at launch. So what will be included, in my opinion, next to Calgar for the Space Marines? I think it will be Chief Librarian Tigerius. He is a very powerful Psyker, so we would, next to Calgar, have a good duo of an all-around fighter in Calgar and a character to play more around with the psychic powers, however they may look in this game. I see it as sort of duo like Karl Franz and Balthazar Geld in Total War Warhammer 1. In terms of gameplay, I think Tigerius would be, of course, less fighty than Calgar, but very, very powerful in terms of magic, his psychic gifts, but of course a capable fighter himself, still being a Space Marine. If you watch up to this point in the video and you would perhaps want more of my content, or you would like to influence what content I will make in the future, as I'm really open to your suggestions, please let it be known in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube things. I would be really grateful for any of them, as starting YouTube channel, every comment and every like are extremely motivating for me to keep going and think of new videos. The next we have Astra Militarum to discuss, and characters that will not be included, in my opinion, are opened up with Ursarask Creed, while he was for many years the most prominent Guard character in the lore, and I suppose in the miniatures as well. At the moment he is sort of dead, or maybe not dead per se, but he's locked away and will most likely not be used in any near future. The character that is certainly not dead, but certainly will not beat a legendary lord, is Sly Marbo, the Schwarzenegger Rambo character. Certainly everyone would want him to be included in the future, perhaps as a equivalent to a legendary hero type of character for the Guard, but he's certainly not a leader of armies type of guy. And similarly to Space Marines with the Ultramarines, I don't think any non-Cadian, or that is non-standard Guard regiment has any chances to be on release, of course, in the game, because that would require different models for most of the army to actually be well represented, and this is a thing best relegated to a future DLC with Krieg, with Katachans and so on. And Guard really doesn't have that many characters at the moment, named ones that would qualify for this list, so two ones that are left I am nominating to be in the game on release, that being of course the Lord Solar Leontus, with him having the perhaps most prestigious military title in the whole Guard in the whole Imperium, while definitely not a combat-heavy character himself, still being just a human. In gameplay terms, I really would expect him to be an extremely potent character in the realm of economy and diplomacy, however it may look in the 40k Total War. With his rank, he has an extreme access to all manner of resources and political leverage. While I previously compared Calgar and Tigurius to Karl Franz and Geld, in practice Leontus may be a more fitting equivalent to Emperor Karl Franz from the fantasy Warhammer. And next to him, I think we will see Lord Castellan Ursula Creed, that being a daughter of previously mentioned Ursakar Creed, as she basically continues his mantle into sort of the newer 40k with the new lore since a couple of years ago. And yes, with her being a Cadian and daughter of a legendary tactician, I think in-game can expect her to be more defensive than Leontus, with perhaps a more elite sort of guard army with more veteran troops and unit buffs. We will see. Next ones are the Orks. Here we have some options with the new plastic models, but once again Mozrok's Kragbad and Sogron Worstnaga are a part of Ork sub-faction, that being the Snakebites or Beast Snagas, however you want to call them. That really, in my opinion, disqualifies them. Maybe less so than with Space Marines and Guard sub-factions, but nevertheless I don't really expect those two to visit the game on release. And other characters that sadly won't and most definitely won't be here on release are Captain Badruk and Boss Zakstrak, as they don't really have current miniature, and I'm actually not really sure if they even have current rules in the Ork army list. Real shame, but very big potential for the future inclusion. So that leaves us with two options once again, but two very good ones. Of course, Gazkul MacUrk Traka, the prophet of Gork and Mork, is the orkiest orc around, the biggest of big bosses. Really, if any orc is going to be in this game, it's gonna be him. He's really an Grimgor Ironhide from fantasy equivalent, just even bigger and even meaner. So I expect him to be an extreme powerhouse of the character for just his raw stat. He really could have potential to be the most powerful single entity in the game release. I wouldn't be surprised about that. Next to him we have boss Sneakrot, master of guerrilla warfare and assassination. I think he would really well round out the Orks option next to Gazkul. I almost said Grimgor, so you know how it is between 40k and fantasy. But yeah, Sneakrot being the more sneaky and assassin-focused character, but while still, of course, packing a big punch, being an orc, might be a very fun addition to the orc roster. And as I said, there aren't as many options in the plastic orc range left anyway. The sort of last faction we need to talk about are the Eldar. While I am not an Eldar expert by any means, certainly to a lesser extent than many other facets of 40k lore, I think we can make a good educated guesses as to who will or will not be in the Total War game. Starting off with Yvrain as her faction, the Yinari. Besides being really kinda left out by the Games Workshop at the moment, they really need other Eldar factions, that being the Harlequins and the Dark Eldar, to even exist as a faction, as there are the mix of all the Eldars. Other lords I wouldn't expect on the release are most of the Phoenix lords. This one I'm honestly basing in big part on sort of game vibes. While they absolutely can lead armies, most of the Phoenix lords I don't think really fitting the starting lord for the game, with an exception of course of the Asurman. I think he is the most all-arounder of the Phoenix Lords and still an extremely cool character in of itself. So from gameplay and, as I said, game vibe point of view, I think he is the most likely one to be included. With him being the Phoenix Lord, I would expect him to really stack those unit buffs to make other Eldar units even more capable and even more scary. And the, I think, less controversial pick out of the two, I'm expecting Eldrad Ulfan, as he is the character the most often represents the Eldar point of view in all sorts of books and really feels like a venerable character, sort of in line with Kalgar almost, to be included in the game. He himself, of course, being an extremely powerful and ancient Psyker, I would expect the most powerful Psyker in the game. And in terms of gameplay, I think if Eldar will have some sort of faction mechanic to use the strands of fate, readings of the future, or that sort of thing they are known to do in lore, then I really expect Eldrad to make this mechanic even stronger and even better. And if Eldar will not have this, then Eldrad for sure will have, as he is always related to seeing of the future part of the Eldar and trying to influence what will happen in the future. But we're not done yet. As I've said previously, I strongly believe there will be an additional faction, not surprising anyone. I think it will be the Chaos Space Marines, particularly the Undivided ones, as between the Imperial factions with Space Marines and Imperial Guard and Xenos ones with Orks and Eldar, the only, let's borrow the Age of Sigmar term, the only Grand Alliance that is missing completely at the moment is Chaos. So their inclusion would most likely look a lot like the Warriors of Chaos pre-order DLC for Warhammer Fantasy Total War 1, but let's just hope if that's the case, then it will perform a bit better on launch. So why do I think it will be the Undivided portion of Chaos Space Marines? Mainly because it's the most broad, the most basic kind of Chaos Space Marines, if anything basic in Chaos Space Marines even exists. And in big part because then we don't need a Primarch to be included in the game. As I've stated previously, I don't believe any Primarch will be in fact in the game on launch. So that would leave out the god-specific Chaos Legions, as they really need their Primarchs to be included for their experience to be whole. And just to make the prediction portion harder or easier depending on how you look at it, I will assume as a DLC based on Warhammer previous titles, there will be 3 legendary lords instead of just 2. So who is likely to be included? Actually, especially with assuming 3 legendary lords, we once again don't have that many options to pick from because of newer models sold by Games Workshop of the named characters for the faction. But starting with an easy one, we have Abaddon the Despoiler, the main leader of Chaos Undivided in the whole galaxy, almost a Primarch level character with all his boons from the Chaos Gods, same as Archeon in the fantasy. Warhammer will not be absent from the Chaos presence in the game. Gameplay wise, I would expect him to absolutely be a melee monster. With his inclusion, Gaskell being the most powerful combatant in the game, as stated previously, may not be in fact true between the Chaos God's boons. The Talon of Horus, his Demon Blade Drachnien, Abaddon may actually take the first spot on that one. I would expect him to be focused campaign-wise on uniting Chaos factions in some way. This is of course very hard to predict how the campaign will actually look like on that level, but that would just make the most sense for Abaddon, as he's the prolific leader of the Black Crusades. Next one, we have Fabius Bile. I actually am surprised how well he fits possibility of being a legendary lord. He is of course a mad scientist type of character, detached from strictly anti-imperial politics of other chaos leaders, does his own thing, learning at Camorra and so on. So I think he actually would be a very good counterbalance to Abaddon inclusion for very different type of gameplay, with his whole deal being genetic modifications and improvement of the Astartes template. We can expect very strong focus on unit buffs, maybe some sort of Gene Lab minigame to mix around different bodily modifications for his Astartes. And the toss-up, or the third option, previously if I'd done this video like a week ago, that would pretty much be just Harken the Word Claimer, but recently we've got the reveal of Huron Blackheart, the leader of the Red Corsairs and a very beloved character by the community. In time, actually, some years back, it really seemed like Games Workshop experimented with or considered swapping main faction for Chaos Space Marines from Black Legion to Red Corsairs, giving as a bonus the dichotomy of Blue Ultramarines versus Red Chaos Red Corsairs, but as we know, it didn't came to full fruition. But yeah, with Huron getting his own model, and not only that, but apparently also his retinue of the named characters from his warband, this would give a strong case for him to be included in the game. And as I said, we still have Harken as an option, while he is indeed just a sort of lieutenant for Abaddon. He would still make a fine lord, gameplay wise being a bit different, much more assassination and DPS focused than perhaps a more tanky Abaddon but yeah, to be honest, the more I think about it, talking about it now, I really envision Huron to be a better candidate, with some focus on raiding more than conquest itself, for example. The big thing that may still prove Huron to not be in the game, I would say, is just once again Games Workshop communication, or rather lack thereof, that we can expect. Huron was just recently revealed to us, and while perhaps they did collaborate with Creative Assembly sometime before, telling them that yes, Huron will be a big focus for us in the coming future, it's really hard to speculate on that. It's just as much possible that Creative Assembly got the look to Huron in the same moment we got it. So yeah, really a toss-up between those two. I would personally prefer Huron, as I suppose many of you would, but we will see. We will also see if I'm even right about the chaos being in the game. Maybe I'm just pulling this out of my ass and it won't be the case. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry it got a lot of rambly. I may have spent a bit more time than I should on some things in this video, but I hope it was still a pleasant watch for you. Once again, I want to say I really appreciate all the comments, likes and subscribes, but especially the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts about this subject. What do you expect? What do you want from the Total War Warhammer? I hope we can have a bit of a discussion in the comments. Thank you for watching once again, and have a great day. See you around.